What qualifies as a great launch title for a video game console? Or, more specifically, what makes a launch title great for the modern age? Video game console launch titles give us a preview of the experiences we can expect in the future. Often, launch titles set the tone for what we can expect in the years to come for a new system, and some of them hold a great deal of significance. A perfect example of a great launch title is the first Halo, released in 2001 at the same time as the original Xbox. A masterpiece praised by gamers and critics alike. It won numerous Game of the Year awards, but most importantly, it proved that the Xbox brand was a force to be reckoned with and put it on gamers' radars. It was a sure bet that you either owned Mario 64 or GoldenEye for the first few months after the release of the Nintendo 64 as a Nintendo 64 launch title. In 1999, when the Sega Dreamcast was released, it was Sonic Adventure that was the Dreamcast launch title talk of the town. In the case of the Game Boy, nearly every Game Boy owner had Tetris in their library as a Game Boy launch title. However, what about those launch titles that went unnoticed or flew under the radar? Remember Fantavision, a launch title for the PS2? Don't worry if you don't, most PlayStation 2 owners don't either. As I patiently waited the release of Grand Theft Auto 3 a year later, this clever and colorful game was one of my first experiences with the PS2 in early 2000. Or what about one of my favorite N64 games, Pilot Wings 64? Another launch title for the Nintendo 64 that was released the same day as Mario 64. If it weren't for the power of the internet, some of these launch titles would come off as a fever dream if the nerds weren't so adamant on keeping these games alive through long plays and emulator game footage. As compared to decades ago, it appears that video game system companies are more inclined to sell the technology first and then the games later. In the ongoing evolution of game systems, I often wonder about the launch titles for the beloved PlayStation 4 system. However, I was somewhat stumped on this subject. What were some of the actual launch titles for the PS4? In the 2 years following the PlayStation 4's launch, I was still playing games for the PS3, so I hadn't really followed the early days of the PlayStation 4. After a bit of research for launch titles in the early days of the PS4, one title stood out and kept coming up again and again on people's lists of favorite PS4 launch games: Knack. To my surprise, there was a consensus of much fanfare and appreciation for Knack. All over the internet, everywhere I looked, Knack was everywhere when gamers referred to one of their most favorite PlayStation 4 games too. Yes, not just a favorite launch title, but their favorite PlayStation 4 game. Now, this can be for reasons that it's been memed to death for being ironically good for the PlayStation 2 style of structured gameplay, or because people genuinely enjoy Knack and that it has some nostalgic value for early PS4 adopters. I remember quickly playing a demo of Knack at a kiosk stand at a Toys R Us in 2013, and I remember it being somewhat of a pleasant and familiar experience, but nothing to gush over. I was still enjoying the labors of my PS3 in 2013, so a PS4 purchase wasn't quite on my radar just yet. With the ongoing consistent findings of massive deals on PS4 games on eBay and my local GameStop, I decided to pick up this PS4 launch title and delve into it. Knack was conceived by none other than Mark Cerny, whose creative involvement includes games like Spyro the Dragon, Crash Bandicoot, Jak and Daxter, Ratchet & Clank, and the God of War series. With its creator having a resume like that, Knack surely must have something to it, right? Is Knack a worthy launch title that deserves all the love it gets, even if it is, ironically? And is it a game that held to the promise of great things to come on the PlayStation 4 in the years after it released? Subscribe to The Select to keep up to date with all our latest videos. This is Knack for the PlayStation 4.
Just go slow, little buddy. You'll be fine.
Knack starts off with some impressive visuals and a clever intro tutorial introducing gameplay mechanics. The visuals may impress some, while others may think it looks like a polished PlayStation 3 game. Knack doesn't necessarily showcase next-generation visuals for the PS4, but it contains enough variety in its level design and landscapes to garner some appreciation. The cutscenes are incredibly well animated, and the voice acting is good from all the characters. This is where Knack really shines. The attention to detail and the colorful and vibrant settings make it feel like a big adventure. The story of Knack centers around a futuristic society where humans have had significant progress in technological advancements by harvesting energy from relics, physical remnants of a lost civilization. Knack is a world where an endless and ongoing war with the goblins eventually lead to them trying to overrun a human outpost in the city of New Haven. A government expedition is organized to discover how the goblins acquired their weaponry after this event. The adventurer Ryder, billionaire industrialist Victor, and his head of security Katrina decide to embark on this task. To further the success of their mission, they employ the additional help of Dr. Vargas, his assistant Lucas, and Dr. Vargas's creation, Knack. Knack is essentially a large relic stone discovered by Dr. Vargas and has the power to attract many other small relics to himself to create a living organism that can grow in size and become more powerful in a personified blockman. Knack is a little bit like Loco Roco and a little bit like Katamari in some ways. You gather up relics around you to get bigger and stronger to progress through the game for the majority of Knack. The story isn't really anything to boast about. It's a classic tale of good versus evil with a few twists and some minor unexpected revelations. It plays out like a Saturday morning cartoon adventure with some very well animated characters to help reinforce the playful ambiance. In every new zone, you'll meet new enemies and discover different objectives that help further the story. The main way we can define the style of Knack's structure of gameplay is that of incredibly linear. There really isn't anything new or next-gen about Knack with regards to unlocking the potential of the PS4, and it won't really captivate your attention immediately. However, this very linear and minimal approach to the style of gameplay does still feel relevant, and above all, is still fun to play. I hadn't realized how much I enjoyed playing games like Knack until I was finished with it and moved on to more recent and modern game titles. The onslaught of big-budget open-world games seems to have taken hold of the spotlight these days, and weirdly enough, Knack sort of felt like a return to simplicity in a way with some updated visuals. It reminded me of simpler times where a young Dusty Maxwell was playing games like The Mark of Cree and Jackie Chan's Stuntmaster. Knack gives me the old after high school vibes where you can play a game without too much effort and know it won't punish you like most of the more recent video game experiences. Thank you, Kojima-san. Knack acts a lot like old-school Crash Bandicoot games where you can just go straight down these forced paths, but it does do a rather good job of making a linear game not feel all that linear. This is reinforced with different camera angles and close-ups where you can see Knack walking up to the building. Those moments make it feel not as linear. Now, we can say that this is the genius of the brain inside of Mark Cerny's head, or simply that the team at Japan Studio just improved on a lot of the work that has already been crafted over the years in this sort of action-adventure genre style of games. As you smash and bash the crystal orbs along your journey, seeing Knack morph into different shapes and sizes is satisfying to witness. Knack even comes in different forms to beat certain levels and objectives. You got your Ice Knack, your Fire Knack, Wood Knack, even Metal Knack. The bigger Knack gets, you can almost punch your way through anything, and you do feel sort of unstoppable. He protec, he attack, but most importantly, he Knack. Knack doesn't come without its challenges. Having Knack go from big to small offers a bit of complexity. For example, when you're smaller, your life bar is shorter, so you must be much more cautious when fighting enemies. You could die quicker. When you're a lot bigger, you can take on a more rolling style of combat where you can pick up cars and throw them at enemies, but you move much slower and reaction times take more effort. As simple of a presentation that Knack is, there are some minor flaws that won't go unnoticed. As much as it felt like there was a lot going on in this plot, there is not a whole heck of a lot of it to do with the titular character of Knack. Seriously, the game is called Knack, and in all honesty, it really isn't about our beautiful, chunky, blocky boy. More than anything, Knack acts as a wallflower watching these human conflicts take place, and he basically stays quiet in the background, waiting to be told when to move or where to go next. Knack comes off as a story about the other characters, specifically Dr. Vargas and his past, with Knack acting as his ultimate weapon to progress with his agenda. You can almost say that Knack sort of works and operates like an incredible Hulk figure that smashes and pounds his way through the next stage to aid his allies in their missions and further their quest. Towards the end of the game, we don't really know that much more about Knack than we did at the start, and you're left feeling that Knack just acted as a vessel for these characters to achieve their goals. For something that early on presents itself as a strong titular story, it won't feel like that after you've reached the end. Essentially, Knack comes off as a family-friendly game and an entry-level experience for new, young PS4 gamers where they can sit back and watch the drama happen around them, then are left to further the story at their own pace. Knack isn't a cute and cuddly character that would come off as memorable, and even when he's in his smallest size, he kind of comes off as just looking a little bit weird and sort of like a mishmash of orbs that make him look like a cave troll. His appearance changes so much in the game that it's rather hard to feel any attachment towards the character of Knack, and it makes it even harder to like him with his passive, subservient persona. All those small flaws aside, they don't really affect the gameplay, and I can't say that it came off as boring. Sure, the mini 3-second cutscenes of Knack jumping off a ledge come off as slightly unnecessary at times, and there are, of course, the moments where some of the deaths feel cheap in the gameplay, but overall, it still presents itself as a rewarding experience. Its traditional game design is hard to get upset about, and it's a relatively easy playthrough where the basic story and impressive visuals, particularly during the boss battles, make it well worth the experience. Knack does feel a little bit long for what the game is offering in its 8 to 9 hour runtime. It doesn't offer any variety of fighting except for the times that you get the different element versions of Knack, and it is slightly repetitive in its objectives of bashing the hell out of bad guys, then moving to the next area to do this again and again. Knack could sustain some of the enjoyment in small sessions rather than a long, in-depth sit and play session where the repetitiveness will become more apparent. It's a button masher, but it requires you to stay sharp, especially during boss battles, where most do come off as the most visually impressive moments in the game, but also the most frustrating segments. Knack goes from a mild beat-em-up game to a boss battle bloodbath very quickly, and this change in difficulty will have you trying to beat a boss after dying once or twice to figure out the best way to succeed. The great thing about Knack is that it does have some good replay value to it. When you finish the game, you can go to these endurance challenges where you can battle your way in a gladiator-style melee, and it also has chapter selects if you want to go back and play those chapters that you love the most. Knack for the PlayStation 4 was obviously not trying to do anything new or evolutionary with its release, and maybe that's sort of where the discontent came from in terms of its mediocre reviews when it initially got released. But over the years, there has been a loyal following for this game and its main character. The sales of Knack were relatively good, with it selling 1.74 million units worldwide, and thus was greenlit with a sequel, Knack 2 from Sony, in 2017. It's safe to say that Knack did have somewhat of an impact with PlayStation 4 owners. For myself, when I think about Knack and why I appreciate it, even though it's far from perfect, it's simply because it's probably one of the most enjoyable PlayStation 2 games that I've played with PlayStation 4 graphics. And sometimes that can be a winning formula and a good combination for the right gamer who can appreciate that creative approach. Thank you for watching this episode of The Select. If you like what you've seen and heard, give us a like and subscribe. This is Dusty Maxwell, and we'll see you on the next one.